Well, hello there, Richmond County residents. Celeste Gotel coming to you from the Senior Center Without Walls with a new edition of Age-Friendly Community Conversations. This is actually the sixth episode that has been recorded, and I'm really excited to have Lynn Stewart with us from Caregivers Nova Scotia, and I'm going to introduce her a little bit more later. But for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, you may not have seen one of the previous episodes, and you're probably wondering, what is this series called Age-Friendly Community Conversations all about? Well, as you know, for those of you that are familiar with Seniors Take Action Coalition, we've been promoting an age-friendly community for about 10 years now in Richmond County. And an age-friendly community has a number of different components to it. We'll talk a little bit more about those later on in the conversation, but one of the most important things about an age-friendly community is something we call communication and information. And it's really important that people know what's going on and that they have access to information that will help to improve their quality of lives. So that's why we introduced this new show. We do a lot of our work on social media, but we also know a lot of our older adults in Richmond County tune in to Tell Eel, which is why we kind of started this particular program. So my guest today is Lynn Stewart, and she's the Caregiver Support Coordinator for the Cape Breton region. And I wanted to have Lynn join us today because we know that caregiver support is really important as one of the components of an age-friendly community, because it's really important because it relates to social participation, social inclusion, and community support and health services. And these are three of the 8 domains of an age-friendly community. They're all what I call key ingredients. So when you have all 8 of the things happening in an age-friendly community, we have a really great recipe for success here in Richmond County. But before we get into some of the questions I want to ask Lynn so that she could share with our viewers, I just wanted to provide a bit of commentary kind of on caregiver support. And some of it I'm sure she'll share as well as she's talking to us later. But one of the things that's really compelling and why I wanted to talk to Lynn is that caregiver burnout is a very common thing. And studies have shown that over 60% of caregivers actually experience symptoms of burnout. And I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about that later. We also know that they may not have an adequate support system in place that they need in order to support them through their particular journey. We know that they may experience financial difficulties, particularly if they have additional costs related to caregiving. We also know that many women find themselves in that caregiver role later in life, and they may also have their own health issues as well. We know many of them, because of their caregiving demands that are placed on them, we know that they may find themselves isolated and no longer involved in some of the networks and social activities that they were accustomed to doing. We also know that caregiver support is really crucial for an age-friendly community because it really directly impacts the well-being of many older adults here in Richmond County. I think in an earlier episode, I talked about this notion of loneliness and social isolation. And I think I shared with you that the World Health Organization has actually named loneliness as a global health priority. And it's really urging communities and countries and others to kind of take action because chronic isolation, which is often something experienced by caregivers, is actually more harmful than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, I know that probably shocks you, but there's all kinds of reasons for that. So enough about me. Now I want to, as I said, reintroduce Lynn Stewart, who I have had the pleasure of knowing for a while now because of my work with Seniors Take Action Coalition. And I know she's very passionate about this work, so I'm sure that will come through as we have our conversation today. But as I mentioned, she's the Caregiver Support Coordinator for the Cape Breton region. And I'm going to get her to start off our conversation today by telling us a little bit more about what is Caregivers Nova Scotia. Over to you, Lynn.
Thanks so much, Celeste. I'm so happy to be here. And what a wonderful job you did at highlighting some of the really key needs of caregivers. So that's a great place to start. Caregivers Nova Scotia, lots of people are surprised. We're 26 years old. so many
Wow.
folks say, I had no idea you existed. So
Yeah.
a lot of people are surprised at just how old our organization is. We're a nonprofit organization. Our funding comes from the Department of Long-Term Care and Seniors, but we support caregivers of any age who care for care recipients with physical or mental conditions, disabilities, age-related conditions. Um, and we're province wide. So I cover the Cape Breton region, but no matter where you are in Nova Scotia, there's a caregiver support coordinator that can support you through your journey. And I also like to always add, we're one of the few provinces in Canada that has a organization just dedicated to the support of unpaid caregivers. So it's a real privilege to do this work here.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
realize that you're one of the few provinces. And that's like, as you mentioned, you cover the Cape Breton region, but there are people just like you throughout the province that are doing this kind of
all
work.
across the province. Exactly. No matter where you are, there is
Yeah.
a support coordinator in your area that can be right there beside you and follow you along. And
Mm-hmm.
a really exciting thing, aside from the work that I do as a caregiver support coordinator, which I'm sure I'll talk about later, we're in a real time of growth. So in the last year, we've hired four new members to our team that are involved with some really exciting things. We have a communication coordinator who's the mastermind behind our social media, our website, and lots of other things. We have an education coordinator who's been revising our handbook, working on some new ways to deliver education. We have an outreach coordinator who is dedicated to providing support to those individuals that we've identified that are underserved. And we have a leader for our social prescription project, which is in partnership with the Canadian Institute for Social Prescribing. So lots of
Mm-hmm.
exciting things happening.
Yeah, and that part, that's something I maybe at a later date we could talk a little bit more about that particular project because we actually just recently in Richmond County, myself and Debbie Sampson have done some training with the Canadian Deep Prescribing Network. And
Yes.
we've
Okay.
actually offered a couple of workshops in our community to start giving seniors education about the importance of kind of looking at their what they're taking by way of medications and having discussions with their healthcare providers. So that's a really kind of exciting development as well. I think the other thing, before we get into the specifics about what the role of a caregiver support coordinator does, one of the other really exciting things from my perspective is the attention that caregivers are starting to get at a national level. Like they're no longer an invisible group that is contributing, and they're starting to get a lot more attention. But maybe before we get into your role as your specific role, can you comment a little bit about that because it has been giving a lot more attention.
It is so exciting. And I'd love to. There's a new national organization called the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence. And a lot of this they have spearheaded a lot of really amazing movements for caregivers and
Mm-hmm.
moving their needs forward on a national level. So the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence, I believe, is just 3 years old, and in that
Mm-hmm.
3 years has done, a world um, of work for caregivers. Last year, they have got the federal government to putting a national caregiving strategy within the
Yes.
within the budget. So exciting. And that is
Yeah.
just we could have a whole conversation about that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of the needs that you identified, that strategy brings all of that together and discusses how can we go about, you know, providing better supports, financial supports, respites, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for mental
Yeah, and maybe
support.
maybe at a later date we'll be able to actually bring you back and have a conversation
Yes. Yeah.
specifically about that because again, I think the role of caregiver is starting to become more and more important as we have an aging population,
Mhm.
particularly and more older adults are now have the burden of responsibility of caring for another adult. And we also know that even though a lot of people don't recognize this, the majority of older adults as they age are aging in their home. Really
Mhm.
only 10% of older adults are in a long-term care facility. 90% of them are in the community. So supporting the caregiver is even more and more important as we age kind of well in place. So
Absolutely.
anyway, we'll bring you back at another time to get into that.
Yes.
But tell
Well,
me a little bit more about your role as a caregiver support coordinator. You talked about some of your team member roles, but what do those of you that are kind of boots on the ground,
hmm.
what is your role?
So, as a caregiver support coordinator, I like to say, meeting the caregiver where they are is, at the center of all of our roles. And that can look entirely different depending on where the caregiver is in their journey, what they have going on in their lives, and what the needs of the care recipient are, of course. We offer a lot of one-on-one support, education, um, information. We help folks navigate healthcare systems, walk them through large transitions that may be happening, like,
Mm,
if there is a move to long-term care, or maybe the discharge home and where to find the resources and supports in their community, or, grants or benefits for financial support, things like that. So it really is, at the crux of it, it's good listening. It's really hearing what that caregiver needs. And I like to say to folks when I first meet them, we want to be this hub for all things related to your caregiving experience. Always start with us, and then we can see, you know, what support we can provide for you. And if we can't, then we connect you to the people that can.
yeah, and I think that's really important because those of us that are providing support to older adults in our communities, we don't necessarily know it all, but the important thing is that we can help people navigate through the systems and make referrals and get them to where they need to be.
Mhm.
We, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a
Mhm.
village to support caregivers
Yes.
because there's so many different components of what they need, as you suggested.
Yes.
So,
And
when you said you meet with a lot of people one-on-one, what does that look like? What do those meetings involve? Are they telephone? Are they Zoom? Are they in person?
right. So most of our one-on-one support is via phone or email, strictly due to resources.
Of course.
I
Yeah.
cover all of the Cape Breton region, so you can imagine how
Yeah.
busy that is. We like to call ourselves, we like to be known for the fact that we are a warm line. So that means that we pick up the phone. Our biggest mandate is to have, so although we wear lots of hats and we do workshops and education,
Hmm.
our biggest service that we want to provide is just to be there for caregivers, to answer
Hmm.
that phone, to be there to respond to their email. Some folks I have in my circle, that one-on-one support is on kind of a routine basis. So I might reach out to them every 2 weeks or monthly, and we kind of have this special that window just to
Right.
kind of, you know,
Good.
make some space for their whatever's going on for them. And which is helpful because support groups happen monthly, which is some people can't come to support group. Sometimes once a month just isn't enough support for others. So I think
Yeah, well,
it's
that kind of is a natural lead into the next question I have for you because we hear about caregiver support groups, and I know right now we don't have one in Richmond County,
right.
and we've been talking about what that might look like if we
Absolutely.
are able to do that. But tell us a little bit more about a caregiver support group. What happens at these support groups?
Sure. Our support groups, they're confidential spaces, they're safe spaces for people who are providing that unpaid care, that essential unpaid care, to come together, share their experiences, listen to others. You see people sharing tips and tricks and answering questions, supporting each other through difficult things. What I see happening at those support groups, um, there is really a shared understanding or shared experiences by caregivers the world over. No matter if I'm caring for someone with this condition and you're caring for somebody with that condition, a lot of our experiences are similar, a lot of our struggles are similar, a lot of the difficult emotions that we're feeling are very similar. So it's a space to kind of find that connection and that understanding and that support in a safe and confidential thing. The other thing I see that happens in support group is you hear from people a lot that they just can't talk to just anybody about their caregiving experience. Sometimes they
Mhm,
find that not everybody understands because if they're not
mhm,
going through it. So that's a real special thing to provide a space where people can come and speak about the things that maybe they can't talk about just anywhere. The ups, the downs,
mhm.
all
So
of
we're
it.
talking, as I mentioned earlier, we're having conversations about actually maybe getting a caregiver support going in the community. So this may be a good time for us to kind of put that out to the universe, to kind of let folks know that this is a conversation that we are having. There is one that is currently available in Port Hawkesbury, but
Right?
so we're looking at maybe Almadam as a possible option to have one.
That's right.
So that's exciting, and that's coming.
That's
Hopefully,
right.
we'll be able to get that underway come fall, so that people that would like to participate in a support group don't necessarily need to go as far as Port Hawkesbury in order to be able to access
Exactly.
that. Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah,
some other things that happen, sometimes we bring guest speakers in. Sometimes, you know, I'm real, all as facilitators, if there's a theme, anticipatory grief or burnout, or,
right,
then that's what we talk about. Then we bring education about that and we focus on those things. So it really is designed by the people in the group,
right.
you
Okay.
know?
So that's an option of something that can be provided locally. The other thing is you mentioned earlier, in terms of what people can access, because a lot of times people ask the questions, what is available locally? So it,
Hmm.
you may not be local, but you are accessible to anybody in Richmond County, and
Absolutely.
you can have those telephone conversations with them and direct them where they need to go. And what other programs might there be available that if we were to try to start getting more programming locally?
Sure. Well, um, another thing that we do, kind of, if you mean like me, in
Yes,
person
yes,
locally, is
yeah.
providing workshops. So we have some educational workshops, and again, with a brand new education coordinator, I can see those
Mhm.
growing and that list growing. But currently, right now, we have 5 educational workshops that we put on, and
Okay.
this is the first place we're announcing it. We haven't even made a poster yet, but we have made a booking at Isle Madame Senior Center for October the 7th. And I'm going to be
Yes.
putting on a workshop there from 1 to 4, the topic being caregiver stress management, which is a very popular workshop that we do, open to any and all caregivers that are
Yeah. So what was
supported.
the date on that again, Lynn? It's
October the 7th.
October the 7th, and it's on
Yep.
caregiver stress. And
Caregiver stress management. Yeah,
yeah, and it's going to be at the Almadam New Horizons Seniors Club in Ayrshire.
that's
That's
right.
great. So what
Yeah.
other types of workshops?
We have caregiver stress management, understanding behaviors in dementia, which is our newest. We have one on advanced care planning.
Okay.
We do another called safe medication use for seniors. It's done in tandem with a pharmacist, which is another excellent one. Similar to some of the
Yeah.
information probably that the D-Prescription Network was speaking
Yes.
about. How do we manage our medications when you're managing medications for someone else, and
Right.
safety around medication management. And there's another we do called brushing up on mouth care, which is a little bit more of a um, maybe more a niche. Not everybody, not
Yeah.
but caregivers who are caring for someone who may maybe be palliative or have a neurological condition. It's an
Right.
excellent
Okay.
um, workshop for
Good.
that.
Yeah, so again, this is an opportunity for seniors clubs in the area and other community-based organizations to actually access some workshops through your organization. So that's
Absolutely.
yeah, that's really exciting.
And the
Um,
other thing that we do, and I, is just to come out to the different seniors clubs and just to do a programs and services talk. So
yeah,
even just at the very bare minimum, again, people don't know that we exist. So another thing that we offer and do a lot of is coming out with a programs that, to talk about our programs and our services and introduce Caregivers Nova Scotia to the community, share
yeah,
our resources and brochures, and just
yeah,
put a
that's
face to the name.
absolutely. And I think that's really important. That's something that we hear a lot of. And recently, you would have participated in our May 28th community showcase. And so many people provide us with the feedback about how important it was for them to meet people up close and personal so that when they're making that phone call, they actually know who's on the other end of the phone, which
Yes.
is a real kind of added bonus to what we did. We wanted to get information out there, but it also gave folks an opportunity to meet people face to face, which was really kind of exciting. Yeah,
Kudos to you. What an honor to be in that room. There were so many wonderful organizations,
yeah,
and I think there's a lot more work being done, like more and more to kind of break down those pillars and to know
yes,
our other community organizations and what they do and to be able to better make those referrals and
yeah,
so it's really helpful for the service providers too.
it is. One of the things I wanted to comment on, get you to comment on a little bit about some of those kind of introductory remarks I made at the beginning about how caregivers' health, their own health is kind of at risk as a result of the new role that they may have taken on. So, how do your programs help to reduce social isolation, which is one of the key components of an age-friendly community is social inclusion? How do your programs help to reduce social isolation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think truly any space where people are able to come together, in turn does really reduce social isolation.
Hmm.
You were talking about the World Health Organization's work on social isolation. There's also some clinical guidelines that have been developed since this work has come out. And they talk about loneliness as being a real subjective thing. So it's
Hmm.
based on the needs of the person experiencing the loneliness. And so I think one of the things that we provide is, a sup- very specific supports
Hmm.
to unmet needs.
Right.
We know that people that are caregivers have unmet needs. They are under recognized, they're under supported. You know, many of them, almost half of caregivers say that people um, don't ask them how they can better support them, whether that be their clinicians or there's just, and like you say, there's more work being done all the time. But
Hmm.
so we do address an unmet need. Um, and that, yeah, that in turn really does turn, isolation to support, to, underserved to better connected and well connected.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things about caregiver support that I think is critical in terms of this concept that we refer to as aging well in place, if you will, is helping seniors to remain independent in their home for longer. How does providing the support to the caregiver allow for that and kind of pave a way for that to happen?
Hmm. I think that, a healthy caregiver means a healthy, care recipient, or senior, that person that's
Hmm.
receiving the care. And so people that have better support and tools to maintain, they are better positioned to maintain their own health and well-being, which helps
Hmm.
reduce symptoms of burnout and compassion fatigue and overwhelm,
Hmm.
which means that they can do the very, very essential job of a caregiver longer. And people are able to reduce or to stay in their homes longer. There's a statistic that we talk about a lot, and it's 98% of home care clients age 65 or older would not be able to remain in their home without their caregiver. So it's such a clear picture.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And it's such a clear reason why the need for caregiver support is so important because without that caregiver support, um, people would not be able to remain in their homes, and the burden to our long-term care facilities would even become more exasperated.
yes. And I
Yeah.
hear all of the time when I'm doing those programs and services, I wish I had heard of you sooner, or I'll meet
Mhm.
caregivers whose care recipient has, long since passed away, and they'll say, "Oh, if I had only known about these supports and these things." So it's,
Yeah.
it really does make a difference in people's lives.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you've been around for 26 years and there are a lot of people that still don't know about your organization. We face the same thing. We've been around for almost 10 years
Mm,
and people are hearing about us for the first time, and which is exactly why we're doing things like this, because we know that number one, it takes all kinds of mediums to get information out there. And gone are the days when you had local newspapers and when the local radio station and stuff like that. So much has gone to social media, and we know that a lot of older adults and folks in rural communities may not access social media in the same way as the younger
yes.
generation, for example. So it's really important that we have conversations like this so that we can get that type of information out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially in the rural areas. The the senior centers and the drop-in centers and the activities that you provide are so important because we know in rural centers there's less community spaces for people to, you might have a post office and a grocery store, maybe a grocery store.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
there's no, so there's less places to, to make those connections and to learn about that information. So the work that you're doing is so, so
Mhm.
important.
Mhm. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how Caregivers Nova Scotia helps to kind of support more social participation, helps to include more social inclusion, obviously provides a lot of community support and health services. You provide information. So you're kind of hitting four out of the eight domains of an age-friendly community from your organizational perspective. I'm sure also transportation could fall into that because by having people like you who actually will go into communities, it makes services more accessible. So,
Mhm.
five out of the eight domains, Caregivers Nova Scotia helps to promote an age-friendly community. So, we've heard a
Right.
lot about kind of what's available from your organization, and is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, Lynn, that hasn't come up in our conversation?
Hmm. Well, I think that when you're saying it hits so many of the domains, I think it's because caregiving is really far reaching. It does affect so many aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And we talked about how, a healthy caregiver can help that senior remain in their home. It really makes healthier communities. I was a
Mhm.
caregiver that was also working full time and was also a mother. So I'm a healthier mother when I'm well supported. I'm a healthier wife and friend
Mhm.
and person in the workforce and a healthier caregiver, and then that person who's a senior, so I just really want to, it really is
Mhm.
so far reaching. So all of these domains, it really does make healthier communities. So I think the other thing I want to say is just for recognition, I think that recognition is so, so key when it comes to spreading the word and supporting caregivers. So for those watching, for those, most people will either be a caregiver or they'll need a caregiver at some point in their life.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they almost certainly know a caregiver. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but sometimes you may think, they may not talk about being a caregiver. They may not recognize themselves as a caregiver. That self-recognition may not be there. I'm just a wife caring for my husband. I'm just a daughter caring for my mother.
Mhm.
We talked about a lot of the things that caregivers are at risk for. So, you know, I just want to leave folks with the point to really, if you can, do the work to recognize caregivers and to
Mhm.
acknowledge them. And they may not have even acknowledged themselves. They may not even recognize themselves as a caregiver. And so I think that really can be transformative for people. And
I
then,
think that's, yeah, I think that's a wonderful point. And thank you for raising that, Lynn, because like you said, so many people don't even consider themselves as a caregiver. They just are doing what they do naturally, being in a
absolutely.
relationship. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What were you
No,
going to say?
no, that was great. No, it's true. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's a really great note to end on is what we can do to kind of, acknowledge the important role that caregivers have in our community. And hats off, we've all, as you said, you've been a caregiver, I've been a caregiver at times in my life, and it's not something that's just going to happen once. It could happen many times in different scenarios or whatever. But yeah, it's we really need to kind of, thank those caregivers out there that are doing a
Absolutely.
wonderful thing, and they're contributing to that overall health and well-being of all of our
Yeah.
communities for sure. So, if somebody wanted to contact you, Lynn, to talk about getting support in their role as caregiver, or if a community organization wanted to have a workshop or what have you, how would they get a hold of you? I will
Well,
include it as a slide as well, but
great. Yes, great. But everybody can get their pens out if they like. But my
yeah,
phone number is 902-595-0128.
okay,
8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. My lines are open. My email address is katebreton@caregiversns.org. So those are the best ways to reach
okay.
us, I think. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll make sure that I put a slide on the end of this program that has that information captured, so that people not only have heard it, but they get to see it. And on that note, I'd like to thank Lynn once again for taking some time out to join me this morning for um, this sixth edition of Age Friendly Community Conversations, a conversation with Caregivers Nova Scotia. Um, look forward to having future conversations, and certainly look forward to working with you, Lynn, to improve caregiving services in the Richmond County area. So until
Thank
we
you.
meet again, thanks folks for joining in, and eager to be back with you for the next edition of Age Friendly Community Conversations on another topic that helps to improve the lives of older adults in Richmond County by promoting an age friendly community. That's all for now.